So as a Reiki person, you should be seeking what the Master sought. And what the Master sought was that perfect emptiness. So all you New Age Reiki people, with all your New Age nonsense, and I'm not a huge fan of the New Age because most of it comes from Alice Bailey, who started the Lucius Trust Foundation. And Alice Bailey talked an awful lot about the Luciferic initiation and the Theosophical Society connected with them. I think it was started by Madame Blavatsky, who was a fraudulent medium. And these people actually tried to hoodwink Krishnamurti and foist a messiah upon the world. In the previous century, in the 20th century, they tried to get this guy, Jiddu Krishnamurti, to be the global messiah and start a new global religion. Well, we've already got one. We have the global religion of scientism. Good luck with that one. And basically, the New Age movement, it's not real spirituality because all this love and light nonsense and peace and don't look at anything bad and never talk about bad things because they'll manifest in the world and only look at the good. Well, that's cowardice. You see, we've all got a shadow, or do you not cast a shadow? Maybe if you're one of these New Age perfect people with all the correct pronouns, maybe you don't cast a shadow. But to be perfectly honest, we all have a shadow. We all have a bit of darkness within us. And sometimes it's quite necessary because when you're dealing with a bunch of bad people, you know, being sweetness and light might just get you and your family killed. So there is a survival instinct within us all that's necessary. And obviously in some people it gets a bit out of hand and they seek to control others in order to feel safe. And spiritual people will use spirituality to gain control over other people. Healers will use the ability to heal and a sense of magic to get control over other people. Teachers use knowledge or assumed knowledge to get control over other people. And scientists use big words and concepts. So this Theosophical Society and Alice Bailey and the like tried to trap Jiddu Krishnamurti into playing the role of the world messiah. And trust me, this cat would have been clever enough to pull it off. But his heart was good. And he basically had to sit them down and said, have you listened to nothing that I've been saying? Because Jiddu Krishnamurti's message was basically, you've got to work it out for yourselves. Rather like Brian in the movie Life of Brian, one of my favourite movies. I'm sure it would probably get into a lot of trouble if it was on television today. But it's one of the greatest parodies of the human race. And basically, the fact that people are lost because they never take the time to sit down and figure things out. Far too busy chasing after things, chasing after people, and trying to live up to other people's ideals and ideas to sit down and think for themselves. And it's a terrible shame because there's an awful lot of clever people out there with a lot of good ideas. If only they were given the time and the space to sit down and self-actualize, and people would start to work out things for themselves instead of being led along by the Pied Piper of the television. So real spirituality then, which the New Age movement and the Theosophical Society actually tried to suppress. Real spirituality, which is self-inquiry, self-investigation, and looking honestly at yourself. Which will bring me into another talk later. So, while we're on the subject of New Age, and there's a lot of New Age gurus around at the moment. What you'll find with the New Age is they'll take one aspect of a spiritual tradition and they'll give it new words and new names and put some scientific blurb with it. Latest scientific findings have studied this, and they'll give you lots of interesting words and names and ideas, and it'll become an intellectual idea that they own. The mindfulness movement, I wish Dennis was still alive to condemn the mindfulness movement with me. But it was a word that I used to like myself a few years ago until I came across the mindfulness movement. So mindfulness is just one aspect of Buddhism. And what people are doing with this mindfulness is using it to suppress who they are. So let's say you're angry. You'd say, well, be mindful. Well, what you've done is not express your anger. And you can fall into a trap of using mindfulness to polish your ego. And polishing the ego is like polishing the turd. We've all got an ego, and nobody's ego is nice at the end of the day. I agree with Eckhart Tolle. The ego is a vampiric entity that feeds off the human life force. The bigger the ego and the more food it needs. And if you'll notice that people with really massive egos not only need to feed it themselves, but they need everybody else to feed it by agreeing with them and loving them and liking everything they do and say. That's called a massive ego. And it feeds off everybody else's life force and devotion and attention. Some of the gurus are the worst culprits for that. And I've seen that when I was in India. So the mindfulness movement, do you want to be taught meditation by somebody who has a college certificate in psychology and meditative studies? Or is the purpose of meditation to learn something that is intrinsically unknown from somebody who has made the journey and experienced the unknown? Otherwise, it's simply the blind leading the blind, which is all the New Age movement is. A lot of people at the moment also are talking about ascending and fifth dimensional reality. Did you know about that the day you were born? It's just something you've heard. Don't worry about what's going on right now. Do nothing. We're all going to ascend is the message that they're trying to tell you. What's going on in the world's meant to happen. We're all ascending. No, we're all being brutally oppressed and having our freedoms taken away from us. I fail to see the ascension in that, but if you wish to commiserate yourselves and pat yourselves on the back with your New Age dogma, so be it. So you see, the New Age movement is there to confuse and take spiritual people away from genuine spirituality, such as self-inquiry, meditation, spiritual practices like yoga. Yoga's not New Age. Yoga's been around for thousands of years. And Qigong has been around for thousands of years. So when I'm talking about New Age, I'm talking about all these other nonsense courses that you can go and do in a weekend. Your 2-day Reiki course, your theta healing retreat that you paid £1,000 for, and now you've got the power to heal anybody of any disease. And all these other nonsense, bogus scams that are quick paths and quick fixes into reality, into spirituality, so that you can get a badge. Your qualification is, look, I've got this qualification, I'm a this, I'm a that. Get out of here. Go away and practice for 20 years. Then you've got something worth saying. Until then, you're just a wasp in a tin can, buzzing around. And so we have to make discernment of what's real spirituality and what isn't real spirituality. And another thing that makes me cringe while we're on this subject of why I got out of all this kind of movement is the love and light people. love and light. Because I've lived next door to these love and light people, and believe me, they're a seething mass of emotions and jealousy and rage and judgment, and they hide it all by going, I love and light, everything's wonderful, love and light, look at me, I never get angry. What a load of utter nonsense. And it's a game that you play with other people and yourself, because you've never had the tools to look and deliberately inquire into what's going on. And you see, and when you take on vows of, I won't be violent, I won't talk about the negative things in the world, and you push those things away, but they do keep popping up like whack-a-mole, doesn't they? Doesn't matter how many people take vows of non-violence, we've still got violence in the world. It doesn't matter how many people say love and light and believe in Jesus and nice things, and you can believe in all the nice fluffy things that you want, because you're avoiding looking in the mirror and realizing that violence is within us all. And violence and oppression and the need for power is within us all. And maybe if we looked at that deeply within ourselves and admitted that it was there, instead of pushing it away or projecting it onto groups of people that we don't like for whatever reason, maybe the world could actually move out of violence and fear and oppression, and we could actually move into some kind of wonderful utopia. But that utopia is never going to be delivered to you by a corporation or by a government or by the TV people or by politicians or by businessmen. It's going to come from ordinary people waking up and deciding to take responsibility for the nonsense that they believe, and taking responsibility for our own state of mind, and educating ourselves and freeing ourselves. So how can we have freedom in the world when nobody is free, and when nobody even has a concept of what freedom is? Well, you can't have a concept of what freedom is. If you have a concept of freedom, it's not freedom. You've defined it, you've nailed it down to the table, you've said it must be this. And then you'll put square pegs in round holes to make everything fit that definition. So there has to come then a change in humanity, and they need to grow up and stop believing in other people, in other people's fixes, in other people's ideas. And as Brian said in The Life of Brian, you've just got to fuck off and work it out for yourselves. Have a nice day.